Yeah.
What was it about the Gospels themselves as a cold case detective that you said, okay, these are the things you would look for that would authenticate these as actual eyewitness testimonies?
Well, before I read the Gospels at 35, I didn't know what to expect. So you're saying that Jesus is smart. I kind of half expected them to be more like the Gospel of Thomas, where you just have wisdom statements of Jesus. But these weren't like that. This was actually a narrative that starts with the birth of Jesus, his baptism of Jesus. I mean, it moves through particular periods of time in the life and ministry of Jesus. And it's telling me a story as if this story actually occurred in real life. I mean, it was interesting about it. And so I didn't realize I was going to have to mine out the red letters. I just thought the whole New Testament would be a series of like Proverbs, a series of statements, wisdom statements from Jesus of Nazareth.
Mm-hmm.
So that was number one. Number two was that they don't line up perfectly. So if you were to compare the Gospels, even like this, the Passion Week, in all the Gospels, you will see that they are. Now, I've heard people say, yeah, compare the Gospel, the Passion Week, and you won't be a believer. Like I could use the Passion Week account to deconvert you, right? Because maybe you weren't aware of how much they are different. But when I saw the differences between these different sequences of events, I was actually encouraged to investigate them as real claims, because I just know from working eyewitnesses, this is exactly the degree to which true eyewitnesses of an event that occurred 4 hours ago are likely to describe it to you, especially if you only give them one run. In other words, if you said, hey, sit with this detective, he's going to record everything you can think of related to this event. And then you're going to vanish off planet Earth. So all I have is that record from the detective of the one time you were interviewed. Well, because the gospel authors are all dead, it's kind of like that. In other words, I can't go back and say, oh, well, hang on, re-interview that person. This doesn't seem like it makes any sense. Well, then you can re-interview somebody and they can say, well, yeah, there were two people, but I thought you were only wanting to know about the one who was talking. So I only mentioned the one who was talking, and that's why I only mentioned one. Well, you don't have the opportunity to go back and re-interview people.
Right.
But this is very, very common, as that you see this level of difference between accounts. And I didn't see anything in the Gospels that would be like a deal killer. But what I saw instead was, wow, like I've seen lies and collusion, and I've seen people get together and get a story together. That's why when I go to a crime scene, the only thing I ever ask the dispatcher to do when they're calling me in the middle of the night and I have to get a suit on and get down to the crime scene, I'll just tell them, hey, have the officers on scene separate the eyewitnesses. Because if you don't separate those eyewitnesses, they'll all tell you the same story because they've had 2 hours to think about it and talk about it with each other. I don't want them talking to each other, because when I get there, they will all tell me something that'll feel like, wow, this is very different. But the great thing is I'm getting the true first blush response from somebody who comes into that setting as a witness and brings his own personal history, his own likes and dislikes, his own or her own area of focus, her own geographic location related to what actually happened. And that robust set of puzzle pieces, all of which seem like they're a little bit different, when you put them all together, before people try to convince each other that they didn't see this and they were wrong about that, I just want to see what they're going to say. And by the way, if you don't think defense attorneys take those first supplemental reports in which everyone says something slightly different and they try to abuse them in front of a jury, it happens all the time. But it turns out we're able to convince juries this is exactly how reliable eyewitness accounts look. And there's a way to explain the differences. And that's what we do in front of juries. So when I saw those differences between the Gospels, I was just like, okay, game on. We can test these, because this looks like this, so far at least, looks like what I would expect to see if these are reliable accounts. Now we can just simply test them. And we test them under 4 criteria. Were they really there to see what they said they saw? Can they be corroborated in some way? Have they changed their story over time, or have they been honest and accurate consistently? And finally, do they possess some bias that would cause them to lie? Those are the 4 areas that this is the jury instruction in the state of California. So I just took that template and I applied it to the eyewitnesses of the Gospels, the authors of the Gospels. And if you do that honestly, you'll be stuck with having to do something with Jesus, because these things actually hold up pretty well. And I just got to a point where I was like, I don't have any. By the way, We instruct jurors that if they cannot offer us a reason in one of those four categories to distrust a witness, they can't say, well, I don't like what he said. Okay, that doesn't fall into one of those four categories. I don't like the way he looks. That's not one of the four categories.
Yeah.
So that you have to really kind of understand, you have to have something you can point to, or you must accept them as reliable.
Yeah.
And so because you're going to end up not having anything to point to, you got to do something with the person of Jesus as recorded on the New Testament pages.
Yeah. So the very thing that might be pointed at by skeptics as a
Mm-hmm.
reason to distrust the gospels is actually one of the most powerful things that you should expect from an
Right.
authentic eyewitness testimony.
Yeah, that's what got me started, was just that I saw that they had the texture
Yeah.
of eyewitness accounts, which are always different. And I can tell you, sometimes they feel like it's a deal killing difference when you start
Yeah.
an investigation. But the more you work through it, the more you realize, okay, I get it now.
Wow. That's powerful.